Welcome to the Weekly Dose Podcast, your one-stop shop for the weekly news in incretin mimetic therapies, with your host, man on the Manjaro, Dave Knapp. Welcome to the Weekly Dose Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Knapp, man on the Manjaro. That's why I am here. You are on the pen. That's why you're here. Wegovy, Saxenda, Victoza, Trulicity, Manjaro, Zepbound, that pen. Or if you're not on the pen, you must have a passing interest in incretin mimetic therapies, GLP-1 medications, obesity, type 2 diabetes. Whatever reason has you here, or whatever reason the algorithm put you here, I hope you'll hang out for a little bit and become part of the community here. We've got a great community, not over here on the podcast so much, but over on YouTube, over on TikTok, Facebook. Wherever you get your socials, you'll find our community, our On the Pen community, and I hope you'll be a part of it, no matter what social media platform you hang out on. But we've got a great show here for the week of Tuesday, March 6, 2024. Can't believe that it's already March. It's going by fast. I say that every year. The older I get, life just steps on the accelerator. And I believe having kids has something to do with that. I mean, life just goes fast. But I'm excited to bring you the news this week. We've got some very interesting news. We've been covering the Change Healthcare hack on this channel, and it's really what's dominated the news, not only in this community, but in the healthcare community at large, because Change Healthcare impacts so much of what happens in the healthcare world. So Change Healthcare is owned by OptumRx, which is owned by United Healthcare. And I like to pull up this little graph because it just gives you a good representation. 1 in 4 patient records in the U.S. is handled by Change Healthcare. Over 39,000 pharmacies, 6,000 hospitals. And with this hack, hospitals have been unable to bill for services. Pharmacies have been unable to process prescription benefits, including manufacturer copay savings cards. And it's just really created a huge mess. On Friday of last week, Change Healthcare put out a memo basically saying that they had stood up an interim system that was going to allow pharmacies to process prescription medications again. So they were bringing that online slowly. It was something that pharmacies were going to have to opt in on their end and get stood up in their own specific pharmacies. So it's not as if everywhere is good to go at this point. You may be calling around to different pharmacies still, but on balance, what I'm hearing from people in the community is that they're getting access restored to medications, which is really good. Now, some interesting news that came out today was basically the Bitcoin ledger shows that there has been a $22 million ransom payment paid to the hacking group that had come out and basically said that they were responsible for this Change Healthcare hack. And they posted screenshots of data that they were in possession of. It looks like that ransom was paid. How that implicates the rest of what goes on at Change Healthcare from here moving forward, I can't possibly say. But I think what this underscores is how crazy of times we live in. I read somewhere that as of 2023, there were over $1 billion in ransom payments from hacker groups for data that they were holding ransom that they had hacked. So this is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. And it just underscores the need, and I won't belabor it because I've talked about it on other streams and other podcasts, but to have just good cyber data hygiene, meaning understand that your personal data has been impacted. Your passwords are out there. Your social security number is out there. Your address is out there. And now your medical records may be floating around out there. So it just opens you up to even more potential for hacks and scams and phishing attempts. So just make sure that you're keeping a good eye on your credit monitoring at this point, because this is a major, major issue, not only keeping people from their medications for the last couple of weeks, but now your data is out there and you're definitely at risk having that data out there. So keep an eye on your credit reports for sure. Interesting news published by Pubmed this week. This was basically data that was taken from a couple different databases of tirzepatide users, and it was looking at Asian populations versus non-Asian populations with type 2 diabetes. And what they found in this was very interesting. So it was patients across 6 studies, and it showed that tirzepatide was more effective in lowering fasting blood glucose and improving glycated hemoglobin in non-Asians than Asians, with the 10 milligram being identified as the optimal dose for decreasing fasting blood glucose. Just some fantastically interesting information to think that between the two different populations of people using tirzepatide, that the Asian population did not respond as well to the glucose lowering, the fasting glucose lowering of tirzepatide. Conversely, Asians actually experienced a greater effectiveness in weight loss and achieving greater than 5% weight loss with tirzepatide. So while they maybe didn't have as good glycemic control, they had better weight loss with tirzepatide. So just interesting information. I don't know that that means a whole lot to anybody, but I think it's fascinating what they're able to do by pulling in data from different resources and kind of putting it into these AI machines that are able to pump out some information that just gives us these little interesting tidbits about how different patient populations respond to these medications. I think we're going to see more and more studies like this coming out, as tirzepatide has now been around for type 2 diabetics for a good bit of time now. Some really interesting news this week that I didn't see coming was that Oprah announced that she will be declining to stand up for re-election on the Weight Watchers board for the coming year. Oprah owns over $1 million in shares in Weight Watchers, which is worth a ton of money. She has basically come out and said that she wants to avoid all appearances of evil, and so she is going to basically take all her shares in Weight Watchers and all the profits therein and donate them to the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which is fantastic. But it really does beg the question, why and what next for Oprah? So I think this is probably bigger than Weight Watchers' underperformance in the GLP-1 world, in the GLP-1 space. It's sort of a separate conversation. I think her foregoing all of her payment is probably an indication that she plans on doing something on her own in the advocacy space. So whether that is working directly with big pharmaceutical companies, that's the only place that I can imagine the kind of money that would justify what she's walking away from at Weight Watchers could possibly be. But we'll TBD on this one. We'll put a pin on this one and kind of watch where it goes. But it's interesting to see how badly Weight Watchers has struggled to stay relevant in the GLP-1 era. You saw them announce in early 2023 that they were bringing on GLP-1 therapies and a whole Weight Watchers program. This sort of went along with that GLP-1 program, and it has really just fallen on its face. It really seems like Weight Watchers, for whatever made it great as a company, not a commentary on their programming, not a commentary on the specifics of how they've approached weight loss for people, but more of an indictment on the company that they have been, and what has set them apart in a noisy industry was the community that they had built with their meetings and everything like that. And they kind of just changed everything all at once. And it seems like maybe what they did was they turned their back on a number of people who saw benefit in that community, and they're simply finding it elsewhere. And now they've sort of fallen into the white noise of this rise in telemedicine in the last 5 years. So we'll have to see where this one goes for Weight Watchers, but their stock fell about another 25% after Oprah announced that she was leaving. So Oprah definitely was a asset to Weight Watchers. Obviously, she came out and announced that she was using GLP-1 medications, which was in a shock to many people, obviously. But it's just sort of a fascinating thing to watch this all unfold with Weight Watchers. I've been covering it over on my YouTube channel since they announced that they would be adding GLP-1 medications. And it's just been interesting to see how badly this whole pivot for Weight Watchers has really fallen on its face. So we'll watch how that one sort of unfolds over the coming weeks and years. And we'll be very interested in what Oprah decides to do in the future as it relates to obesity advocacy. Moving along, talking about the supply chain for Tirzepatide, both for Zepbound and Mounjaro. So our last update was exactly a month ago. It was February 5th of 2024. And at that time, we learned that the the 10, the 12.5, and the 15 milligram doses of Mounjaro were going to be on manufacturer back order until early March of 2024. Well, we're here in early March. There are reports of people still being unable to get some of the higher doses of Mounjaro, and there are plenty of reports of people unable to get different doses of Zepbound. How much what's going on with the Change Healthcare hack may have impacted that over the last 2 weeks, it has to have made a difference with people unable to fill their scripts. I believe we'll get an update probably on Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, sometime this week for sure on that FDA website to let us know where the Tirzepatide supply sits currently. I fully expect, based upon the reporting that I'm hearing, to hear that both Mounjaro and Zepbound are in shortage. I don't think that everything has been resolved with Mounjaro, and it seems like Zepbound is becoming harder to find as well. But the caveat is this Change Healthcare thing may have impacted the supply a little bit for this month's update. So we'll see what comes of that, and I'll definitely update you as soon as possible. Just one more little housekeeping note from this past week that I really want to encourage you on would be to go to my YouTube channel. So if you're not on my YouTube channel, please go over there and subscribe. That is where my best content lives. This is just news, but over there you get so much more, including our weekly show called On the Pen Live. Happens every Thursday night live at 9 p.m. Central Time. And we're on our 58th episode this week. But last week, I had the chance to sit down with Dr. Michael Albert, who is one of the leading voices in obesity medicine in the United States right now. Gosh, this was probably my favorite interview that I've done since I started doing all of this advocacy work for GLP-1 medications and obesity medicine. It's very delightful to sit down with somebody who can match your passion and enthusiasm for this class of medications and what it can do. And this conversation did not disappoint. It lasted about an hour and a half. So this is going to be a good one to listen to on your commute to work, or if you're taking a trip somewhere, just throw it on. There's no video to go along with it because it was a TikTok live that we kind of modified to put over on YouTube. I also uploaded it to the podcast here too. So if you want to stay on the podcast platform, I uploaded it last week. Please, if you miss all of my other content, make sure that you check out the interview with Dr. Albert. It was spectacular. The other thing I did this past week was I gave you a rundown, about a 10-minute rundown on the hour-long documentary that was dropped by CNBC this past week called The Big Shot, The Ozempic Revolution. I just gave you my take on it. Basically, I don't want to spoil it, but that video is available over on YouTube as well. So make sure that you go over there and give my YouTube channel a subscribe. The community over there is bar none the best of the best in GLP-1 community. Just a very knowledgeable community, very compassionate community. And if you're not there, you're missing out. So you can catch that in the description notes of the podcast here. I really appreciate you being with me each and every week. Thank you for giving the 5-star ratings and reviews to the podcast. That's helping this thing grow. And we're really getting some traction over here on the podcast. So thank you for being a part of what I do here at On the Pen with Man on the Mounjaro. Thank you for being part of this podcast. And we hope that we'll get the chance to interact with you a little bit more one-on-one if you come on over to the YouTube channel. That's On the Pen with Dave Knapp, Man on the Mounjaro over on YouTube. We'd love to find you there. Check out all the great content that I've put out there about Mounjaro, Ozempic, Wegovy, Saxenda, Victoza, and even the ones that are in clinical trials right now. I can't wait to bring you more news next week, but until then, we'll catch you on the next one.